So step 3, which comes up to, is how do you identify a potential property? So that's a lot of times by driving around, asking questions.
Right.
But also is that we have an analysis program because it allows you to see the numbers that the investor wants to see.
Right.
And you use numbers more than paint to analyze a good deal.
Yes. I'll use paint to renovate, but to analyze it, I need to know the numbers. And very often, a property can appear good, whereas in actual fact, the returns might be relatively low. But more importantly, a property might appear not very good, but when you analyze the numbers, you say, wow, can you believe it? This is a great performer. And you cannot do that by working out the numbers in your head.
And the reason for that is because there's too many variables.
Too many variables. Robert, when you put $100,000 in the bank and you're getting $6,000 return per annum, your yield, your return is roughly 6%.
It takes no intelligence to save
No
money.
intelligence. Some people would need a calculator for it, but most people can work that out in their heads. However, when you buy a piece of real estate for $100,000 and the rental income is $6,000 per year, then by definition the return or the yield is indeed 6%. But it does not tell us how well our money is performing because firstly, even though the property costs $100,000 to buy, we're not necessarily putting up $100,000. We might only have $10,000 in the deal.
So the variables could be interest rate,
Interest rate,
down payment. So if I could reiterate that once you find an area, you look around, you start looking at properties, leave your checkbook at home. You don't have to make offers. You don't need any money because real estate moves so slowly. It's not this frenetic buy, sell, buy, sell, buy, sell, buy, sell. Sometimes in real estate, we've actually seen people line up and they're bidding the price of a property up. If that's happening, as a serious investor, you'd probably back away because you're probably too late anyway, right?
Right, just stay away from those deals.
Yeah, so you leave your checkbook at home. You don't need money to go look around and go shopping. You don't need to disturb the tenants. You don't need to disturb a broker, but do your research on the area. Then step 3 is how you identify a property. And this is where different brokers or different sales agents have different categories, and as why as an investor you want to make sure you're talking to a real estate agent who is also an investor. For example, if I'm a homeowner, I want to say, how pretty is the paint, how are the flower beds, is the kitchen good, how many bedrooms, and all this. But investors at this point are not necessarily interested in the paint or the flower beds. They're now more interested in the deal. And the question comes up then is how do you analyze a property? Because analyzing a piece of real estate, step 3, is not the same as a saver who just goes to a bank and puts, let's say, $10,000 in the bank at 6%. It's a little bit more complex than 6% off of $10,000.
Right. When you put $10,000 in the bank and you're getting $600 a year coming in, it's pretty easy to work out what your returns are.
Yeah, it's not a rocket science. Being a saver doesn't require much financial intelligence.
Right. However, if you use that same $10,000 as a down payment on a property that costs $100,000 and your rental income is $6,000 a year, then by definition, it may well be true that the returns are 6%, $6,000 coming out. You bought the property for $100,000.
But there's too many more variables to real estate.
Right. It doesn't tell us whether that's a good deal or not.
So the point I want to make right now before Dolph gets into the analysis part, in this workbook, there are worksheets that will show you some of these variables that an investor will go through to analyze a piece of property to identify the right investment for you.
Right. And some of those variables that we have to think of are, firstly, what's the interest rate on the loan that you have to pay?
There's a big difference between a 6% interest and a 12% interest rate.
Sure. Or another way of framing that question would be, does it matter whether it's 6% or 12%? Because there are other variables where the difference may not matter. And what's the application fee for getting the mortgage? And do you need the property appraised in the first place? And if so, how much does that cost? And does that affect your investment at all? What are the property taxes on the property? What do we think the maintenance is going to be? If it's a new building, it's probably going to have lower maintenance than if it's really old.
What's the vacancy factor?
Vacancy factor, very important. What sort of homeowners association fees do we have on this property? Is there any pest control that needs doing? All these things either increase or decrease your cash flow. One of the biggest factors, Robert, is depreciation. This is an expense that you can deduct against your income even though it doesn't cost you a cent. Very important. Now, if you don't figure these things out, you will not know whether it's a good deal or not. Because the interesting thing is sometimes an investment will look good, but when you actually do the analysis, you realize that it's not such a good investment. But more importantly, oftentimes an investment property won't look very good at all, but when you do the analysis, suddenly you realize that, hey, this thing's a great performer.
Again, what Dolph is saying here, this is the nuts and bolts. This is the make or break point of the investment property. It's not the pretty house or the roof or anything like this. It has to do with the numbers. Again, in the workbook, you will find the worksheets that will give you some indication of it. If you don't understand it all at one time, please do not worry. Dolph and I started off as beginners a long time ago, as some of you may be starting off as beginners. So start as a beginner, but as you do it more and more and more, as I said, the process makes you smarter, because today it's the numbers that make you rich. Isn't that true?
It is the numbers that make you rich. To the point, Robert, that very often I used to start off going out looking at real estate deals, and then when I found a few that I thought might be good, I'd analyze them. Now what I prefer to do is analyze the deals that come across my desk, and if there are any that look as though they're good investments, I will then and only then go out and look at them.
That's correct. How long does it take you to analyze a property now that you've done it thousands of times?
I can do it in about 40 seconds flat.
Right. And that's where you find whether it's good investment, bad investment.